I'm here in the Netherlands, the first e-residency program, and Adam and I are first have our own identity, our digital identity from Estonia. And but you're an expert on digital identity consultancy. Why do you have an e-residency from Estonia?
So I chose the Estonian e-Residency card because it offers me a qualified signature creation device at a very affordable price. I was having commercial services coming from either Swiss ID or Lux Trust or KPN, and these are all relatively expensive. And moreover, I need to renew them every year or every 3 years.
And these are 5 years, right?
This is a 5-year card that can
How
also
much is total cost?
100 euros.
So for 100 euro, you have a digital identity, which actually most people all around the world, the e-residency is the most known, right? It's pretty much a lot of people have heard about it.
Yeah,
Where can you use it?
So you can use it anywhere online. So primarily most people will use it to authenticate to a commercial service provider in Estonia or others.
Yeah.
But under the IDAS regulations, you'll be able to identify anywhere within the European single market with this authentication certificate.
You say you will be able to use it under the European ID system. How practical is it already?
So right now there are very few commercial services that are fully compliant with the IDAS regulations, but we're starting to see more and more. I think that we'll see a lot of these in the travel industry start to adopt these relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to potentially make a hotel reservation or rent a car, be able to identify yourself with these types of certificates online.
So that's a very interesting European framework, a law which says you have to accept each other's digital identity, which means that instead of using DigiD, we should be able to use e-residency, but it's not happening yet.
Not yet, but the e-residency is a much higher degree of assurance than a DigiD.
Yeah,
That's
DigiD is low, or medium.
It's low. It's not even substantial. No. So, and the fact that with the digital identity that you get from e-residency, this is at the highest level of identity assurance recognized under IDAS. So it's high. Yeah. So this means it's basically ready for any type of service when they become adopted by other government service providers or other commercial service providers.
But we in the Netherlands, well, we have e-herkenning, which is, I think, has the same kind of level.
Well, you need in order to reach the same level, you need an e-herkenning level 4. That's backed by a PKI Overheid certificate, which is not very common. And
how expensive is it?
I think it's around 330 euros per year for these types of certificates.
Yeah. So instead of $100 euros for 5 years. So it's really practical. So you have been busy with digital identity since 2000, right? Yes. That's about it. Where are we now? In 2019, what kind of digital identities are there, and which are being used a little bit?
So right now we're starting to see kind of a unique convergence between a physical digital identity, like an e-residency card, where it's basically just a token or a gateway to online services, and also those are what they call a derived credential, i.e., how can I take this certificate or this ID card and put it onto my mobile and make it into a more convenient or a more ubiquitous form factor.
Yeah, because show me your e-residency card. I mean, I have it. It's on my website. You can basically take a look at it. But you have a whole bunch of digital ID cards. Yeah. So this is the one.
So yes, here's my Estonian e-resident card.
Yeah, and on the chip there is the keys, the private keys.
That's correct. There's the private keys as well as an authentication certificate and a separate certificate for non-repudiation.
Yeah, and you can use it in two ways. You can first identify that you're indeed Adam Ross, and secondly, you can sign. You can sign any kind of document in Estonia with a simple program, and then send it to 5 other people who can sign it too, and it's really much handier than sending paper around.
And there's also a third use case, which is the ability to use the card to encrypt the data. Yeah. So by using the public key infrastructure backed by the e-residency card, by basically typing in a 10-digit number that's printed on the card of the recipient, I can ensure that when I'm sending a file that it cannot be read by anyone other than the intended recipient. So this provides a greater degree of privacy as well as integrity of the data that's being secured and encrypted.
Yeah, I mean, it is just completely ridiculous how we live in a digital age, how everything goes into the cloud, and we have the most shittiest digital identification systems ever. I mean, in companies, in governments, and as persons.
Yeah, but that's the trend right now, is that many governments and state agencies are starting to issue these sort of converged credentials, which not only prove your identity, but also give you this type of signature function or email encryption function.
It's in the passport, it's in the driver license, and or you have a national identification card with a chip in there.
Yeah, and even in projects in Africa, they're converging more applications on there. For example, in Nigeria, they're offering a prepaid debit card because they're using it as a means for financial inclusion, because they're in Nigeria, less than 2/3 of the population have access to formal banking or even online banking. So for many of them, even cash transactions are difficult. Most of the transactions are done by sending prepaid minutes credit with mobile network providers. Yeah. And so this is really not a sustainable way to grow business. So as a means, the National Identity Management Commission is giving an identity credential where they're actually allowing them to have a prepaid MasterCard and be able to pay for things.
So therefore, you immediately have use of a digital identification tool, and it's very useful. Now, there's two big organizations which normally provide identity. It's either government or banks. Who do you think will be the one who provides it the most?
So I think we're starting to see that the governments will really become the primary ID provider, and that the commercial services like trust service providers or banks will take a secondary role to that. And I think that the IDAS regulations will really make this much more practical to implement in the short term.
Okay. And then other third parties who are doing that?
Yeah, sure. There's lots of trust service providers that are basically commercial ones. They're primarily used to secure components on the internet, so selling digital certificates for websites to identify them, but they offer the same type of authentication and certificates as the governments or the banks are as well.
Okay. Officially in 2019 we should have accepted it inside Europe, but it will take a little bit longer. How many years do you think it will take before I can go to Italy and with my Dutch identification system can identify myself there?
Well, I think it's coming relatively soon. Like we already see on the Estonian state agency portal that you can use your Spanish or your German ID card to identify yourself to there. We know that the governments of Sweden, Spain, and the Netherlands also are very well connected for being able to recognize each other's travel documents. So I think it'll be relatively soon in the next, I would say, probably 18 months or so.
What about your country, United States? How good are they with digital identity?
We have a different idea where we don't focus on privacy or integrity of data, but we focus more on convenience. So there, the electronic signature schemes are really more just a scribble of a stylus on a point-of-sale pad or something equivalent. So
you don't take it very seriously.
Unfortunately, our government doesn't, or at least our standards agency does, but people who adopt these don't.
Yeah. Okay, so America will not lead the way. What about the Asian?
This is also a bit behind. I think really the eyes of the world are focused on Europe right now, because the first digital certificates and signature laws came from Europe, and so the first normalization of them to make them apply towards the 28 EU member states has been a real kind of learning lesson. So I think that that's really a good practical use case for the rest of the world.
Yeah. Last question, because I think you have to go. What do you do yourself? What do you do yourself? You're a consultant. You advise companies. What do you do?
I advise government and state agencies on how to implement PKI infrastructures or how to secure their identity documents. So,
okay. And an American living in Holland.
Yeah, exactly.
How is our ID
resident of Estonia?
Okay, so that's it. You have a complex identity right in front of you. Thank you very much.